Strategic portfolio management. This is another one of those very old frameworks that you'll still see used from time to time in very large companies. But I like it because, and this is something that I cover in my business strategy for data scientists class, I like it because it's an interesting way of thinking about something that we as data scientists or anyone really in technology, it's one of our big challenges. We could build a lot. I mean, software allows us and our capabilities are transferable to many different types of products, many different types of everything from your visualizations to the models and the inference that we can serve, the types of products that we can enable with them. And so with all these choices, all of this possible that we could build, that we could do, how do you decide what to work on? How do you decide what to allocate scarce resources to? So this is something that I definitely cover quite a bit when I'm doing my class is you've got these decisions that you have to make. And this comes down to thinking about prioritization. But this is a strategic way of thinking about prioritization rather than looking at it as purely task driven. Should I be spending my time data wrangling versus that's very tactical. And we're used to talking about what we do in tactical terms. And so in this case, I want to give you a bit of a different direction to think in. And I'm going to use this strategic portfolio management framework. Like I said, it's kind of old. You typically don't see this done anymore outside of, you typically don't see this done anymore. But again, for the way that we operate, not a bad way to think strategically about our role. And so the first thing is understanding we have finite resources. So as a business, you have an amount of dollars that you can reinvest into the business. You've made profit. That profit means you have money to spend. There are definitely core aspects of the business that money must be spent on. And you have your existing lines of business plus potential new ones or updates and additions. And when we start talking about the complexity of operating in a digital world, in digital business models, AI first business models, you begin to realize, wow, the things that made my company money 5 years ago, they may not make my company money in 3 to 5 years. Some of those products may be completely obsolete. Customers may no longer want them, or there could be these enormous revenue generating opportunities out there that I should be investing the company's resources in. And that's how you begin the process of strategic portfolio management. You look at what products exist, and there's a number of different ways that you can evaluate all the products and how much money they're making, what the potential growth is, how much market share you have now, how much you predict your market share to expand, how much market share could be taken from you, what's the margin that you're making on each one of those products, what's the potential if you implement some new features or if you improve your products. Could you improve margins? Could you make more? Could you acquire? And so there's this sort of understanding of some products and some lines of the business have a greater potential for profitability, both short-term and long-term, than others do. And so you use this concept of portfolios where you have this portfolio of products or portfolio of potentially different businesses. You can have one business that owns conglomerates, think conglomerate, where one business owns multiple different businesses that could be operating across industries. You could have different business and operating models represented in the portfolio, but they're all under one umbrella business. And so as a main entity, you have to think, well, should I continue to invest the money back into these businesses? Or is there a better allocation strategy for me? So I take money away from one business unit and begin to transition it into a more profitable business unit, a business unit that has more potential for growth, or enter an entirely new one. Should I spend the resources, take it away from one because I think that one's dying, and invest it into another instead of reinvesting back into a business that is not going to be part of my long-term strategy? And so I like that conceptualization because it comes down to some of the critical principles of strategy, which are obviously, it's not just about the business staying in business and keeping the doors open. That's definitely important. But businesses want to grow. And that means, faced with multiple opportunities for growth, they have to have some way of figuring it out, looking at products and opportunities as a portfolio, then taking advantage of those opportunities to reinvest money strategically, to think about new opportunities for growth. And where can we pull money from? Because we have finite resources. We don't have infinite cash flow. We have only a certain amount of money that we can invest. And we have all of these opportunities. So it's this concept of finite resources that I love because think about it. As a team, you only have so many people on your team. You only have so many hours in a day. You can only accomplish so much work. So if you look at what you do from a portfolio standpoint, you have all of these opportunities. Well, what should you be working on? Does your company have a strategy to figure out what the most important work for you to be doing is? Do you oftentimes see yourself being pulled away from one product in the portfolio to work on another product in the portfolio? Do you think that's a decision that's made strategically, meaning they're intentional about it, or is your company tactical? Are they driven and responding to things like fire drills or customer needs or a phone call from the CEO? Some software development organizations function that way. And everybody's at a different spot in the maturity cycle. Everyone's got different business constraints to deal with. So I'm not casting shade at somebody that's in a tactical business because, especially when you're a startup, there are moments of survival where you are tactical. The strategy is keep the doors open. But you want to get away from that in any business as quickly as possible. You want to spend as little time as possible responding to things you weren't ready for and spend the most time possible pursuing the opportunities that are going to return the most money to the team. And so think about that. Now it's a strategic view. You are intentionally deciding what to work on. Doesn't that sound like a better way to go? Don't you think that there should be a strategy, a why, behind all of the products that you build, all of that value creation that you do? Definitely. And if you have that portfolio management mindset, you think about growth. You think about the limited finite resources that you have and the number of potential growth opportunities. How likely is it that the opportunity will materialize in the way that you expect it? How likely is it that potentially customers buy the product that you build? You think, did you do research? Did you spend enough time understanding the need? Did you put in place the evidentiary support for your strategy, your product strategy? Did you think it through? And this is part of that portfolio thinking, that portfolio mindset. Finite resources, tons of opportunities, tons of ways you could go, but now you're using strategy to refine and to guide, to give the why behind why does the business continue to put money and people into particular activities, into product lines, into specific opportunities. Now you have an evidentiary justification, and that's really where strategy comes from. And especially in complex businesses where now when you look at digital businesses and AI first business models, so many different opportunities that you have to evaluate. And so for a data scientist, this is kind of an interesting way of looking at your job, especially the more independence that you have. And this is one of the reasons why I have that strategy class, is because as a data scientist, there's a lot of latitude in your day-to-day work, and you'll find almost any technical role. The more senior you are, the more likely there is that you have a significant amount of latitude to decide what should you work on, to help maybe senior leadership decide what should you be working on, what's feasible, what's practical. And so whether you know it or not, you may actually be part of this decision of what opportunities to pursue, what to spend your finite resources doing, and which opportunities are going to return the most value to the business, and where should you reinvest All of those resources, all that revenue that you generated, all that profit, where should it go? How do you reinvest it into the business so that the business continues to meet growth targets? And so that's why I enjoy, even though this is a bit outdated and it doesn't apply to every business necessarily, it's a great way of thinking strategically about prioritization, because that's something that you have to do on a daily basis. It's very easy to be a tactical prioritizer who thinks only of what's in front of them rather than backing out. And the great thing about strategic thinking is it allows you to back out and look at and evaluate all of your options in the same way that a business does. So even in your day-to-day work, strategy plays a role in making yourself more valuable, which is one of the things I love about strategic thinking is you can apply it almost anywhere to become more effective at everything that you do, not just right now, but now you're thinking long term. Now you have a plan. Now you have that why. You've created that thesis and you've supported it. You understand why you do what you do. Think about it. Don't you want employees who do? Don't you want employees who understand and have that sort of thought process and thinking? Oh, of course. Businesses definitely enjoy having them more. When you're thinking strategically, they enjoy those types of employees more, and they definitely promote them and pay them better because you are able to return more value to the business because you think like CEOs do. So that is your strategy, portfolio management. Again, like I said, a little bit old and outdated. You probably won't ever see this. If you're in a strategy planning session, it's very unlikely that you'll hear portfolio management pulled out of mothball. But it's an interesting mindset, and it's a mindset that's still relevant, especially in your digital competitive landscape.